Lissette, welcome back to the show, Mamacita. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hello. What a full circle moment to come back as a mom.
Okay, we are like mothers now. We spoke on the podcast years ago at this point. I will link Lissette's original episode in the episode show notes. And it's a really interesting discussion where we talk about how you can transition your 9 to 5 skills into a full time career, which now you are over a decade in the content creation world. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I started my blog in 2013. So we are 12 years in.
Okay. 2013 was a good year because that's when I started too. And look at us now. Here we are, full circle moment, full time creators, new moms. And so I have invited you onto the show because this series that I'm doing, Jefas y Mamás, is really meant to like peel back the curtain around what motherhood can look like, especially if you are an entrepreneur, first gen, Latina, navigating all these different worlds. For me personally, I always felt like motherhood was not conducive to all my other life goals, whether that was being financially free, having my own business, just like having flexibility. I didn't see any examples of that growing up. I'm curious for you, what did motherhood look like for you before you were a mom?
I think for me, I was raised, Latina, and my family was the type that they had to work, not even 9 to 5, sometimes a 9 to 9 to make ends meet. So for me, it felt like being a mom meant I had to be working a lot. At the same time, we talk about balance, air quotes, balancing it with having a child. There's no way that I was going to be able to give a child that much time. And I think for me, in entrepreneurship, that's like your first baby, right? So I thought, oh my God, how can I possibly split my time enough to intentionally raise someone and intentionally put time into work, career, business? So for me, I actually questioned for a really long time if I even wanted kids because I knew that for me, career, work was a big thing for me, which is not the case anymore. But we'll get into that. But I really thought, that. So when we knew we wanted to start a family, what's interesting is I said, but I don't want my identity to become a mom. Like I still want to be Lisette. I still want to be the business owner. And there's some truth to that, but a lot of perspective also changed. So I'm kind of eating all my words today.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to talk shit when you're not in it, right? When you don't have the experience. I'm like, first of all, I'm the first person to say, shout out to all the moms that came before me. I know for a fact I was a terrible friend because I did not know how to support you in this journey. I have so much more knowledge now. So, please take my condolences and my apologies for just not fucking getting it because you really just don't get it until you're in it.
Yeah, when I had a baby, I remember being like, there's so many moms I never checked in with. And you don't know what you don't know. So it's fine.
Absolutely. Okay, so at what point were you in your entrepreneurial journey when you started thinking seriously about motherhood?
Wow. I haven't really thought about it in that way. I thought about in life, when did I want to become a mom? But you're right, because I think it also correlated with the success of my business. So if my reality was, oh no, I won't be able to balance life and this much work. I don't want to be that parent that has to work 9 to 9 and not see my kid all day, which by all means, if that is your reality, that whatever works for you and whatever you want to do and feels right for you. I didn't want that for me. So I said, I have to wait. I have to wait. The moment we had that conversation was late 2022. And I feel like that was when I was kind of peaking in my business. We had our highest revenue year, it doubled from last year, trajectory to go up and up the year that followed. So I felt like, all right, I'm in a good place right now where I thought I didn't have to invest so much time into my business. So, what a great time to spend time or invest my time in life. And I think that that was the decision. I wouldn't say we had, and I say this honestly because I know a lot of people think, how do I know I'm really ready? It was one of those on a whim, like, do you want to have kids? Same. I had taken out my IUD TMI that year. I was like, should we just like let's see what happens? And that really was how we ended up with a child. But yeah, it was really more, I think, I realized that I was in a place where I could take a little bit of a step back from my business, which is probably why I was so mentally open to the idea of children.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I find that I was in the same sort of headspace where a lot of the professional accolades that I'd wanted to achieve were kind of like checked off. And I started having like this existential, what is this all for?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
What did that conversation look like for you in your head and also with your partner?
Yeah, I will never forget actually. There was these 2 speaking engagements that I really wanted to do. It was these big conferences I always wanted to be a part of, and I did them. And then I hosted a conference for one of the big social platforms that I love. And I remember looking at Justin and I said, I've done all the things I said I was going to do. And I was like, so what here? Do I just keep adding stuff to my list? Do I keep moving the goal? Like, what happens? And again, I don't think the conversation of, oh, so now I should become a mother came after that. But I think I was having that existential crisis of like, what else? Oh, I'm going to want to speak at someone else's conference. What am I doing for my own life? What is the space I want to build for me? And I think I started to really shift my mindset away from accolades and all these kind of public facing awards, and again, these things matter. These things build authority. They make you feel really good and you deserve them. But I think once I started to get the ones I thought I wanted and I wasn't 100% fulfilled, I was like, wait, there has to be something more. There has to be more to life. So yeah.
I can totally relate to that. I'm curious what the conversations were like when it comes to you and your partner, because obviously you are building a business, you are a boss babe, CEO, running the whole show. How do you also be like, hey, babe, I think we also have space for like a whole ass human?
Yeah. I think in some ways we were Delulu, right? So in some ways we were like, yeah, I mean, if I could build a whole business, I could definitely build a whole human and get, hey, we're doing it well. Okay. She's a few months away from being a 1-year-old. So we're there. But I remember one conversation we did have to have. And I think, especially as female entrepreneurs, there is this stigma, right? Of like, if someone's gonna scale back on work, if someone is gonna stay at home, it's likely gonna be the female in the relationship. That's just how society has painted a picture for us. So, a really interesting conversation we had to have was, oh, like, I still need to build the business though, because it makes more financial sense that I invest more of my time in the business versus what you're doing right now. And it's in this way where one of you has to take almost the ego hit to be like, well, it's not that your business, not that your work is less important, but the time investment yield is higher over here versus over here. Of course, you can both be working, send your kids to daycare, or have someone who lives with you and is able to care for your kids. It's just something that we had to decide. Okay, do we pay someone else to do that, or would we prefer that one of us takes the kind of hours hit on not doing as much work as they said they would to stay at home with the child? So we kind of discussed that, and it's still kind of an ever growing routine because as your baby grows, the routine changes. Where I was going to come back to work pretty quickly, I was going to kind of still investing the same amount of time, while Justin was always doing some entrepreneurship and some actual formal 9 to 5, or we call it like 9 to 1. So that part, right? The like him going to an office, going somewhere, we cut out. And then the only thing he's doing is anything that is contractor work. He's supporting us with the business. So we kind of made it almost like a household business plan because we felt that for us, it was very important for our kid to stay home with us just in the way that we chose to parent and even feed the baby, etc.
Yeah. I love the rawness and realness of that because I've literally had the exact same conversation with my partner and just like, where's the highest return on investment when it comes to our time? We were very clear on like, we don't want to do daycare right away. We don't want to outsource the raising of our child. And so the conversation was, hey, how do you feel about being a stay at home dad? And like, those are conversations that like would need to be had. I always tell people like, the shit you think you need to make decisions on, it's not real. Like, the design of the nursery doesn't fucking matter. The list of people at the baby shower doesn't fucking matter. You need to be talking about who's taking day shift, who's taking night shift, who's going to reduce their hours, who is going to do XYZ. Like, that's the conversation that needs to be happening. And I don't think there's anything that needs to be like sugar coated in this journey.
Transparency is so important, and even transparency about, so how does this make you feel? And that's why I called it an ego conversation, because especially he's also a Latino man. There's so much in our culture that says shame on you if you're not the breadwinner, right? So having a conversation where it's like, the path of life that he's chosen is he's fulfilled by things that have nothing to do with his career. I am fulfilled by things that have to do with my career, and that's great. We've built a symbiotic household over that. But it also means when you're talking about raising a kid, it is drop the ego. Who's taking her to the doctor's appointments? That's not all him, right? Like when it comes to household tasks, maybe I'm the one always managing feeding the baby, but he's like, it's okay, I'll clean up after us. So kind of like really making it feel like a partnership, which It's interesting because, to your point, the communication also has to continue happening, because there's this, some people say you become roommates with your partner, with your husband, with the dad in the relationship, because you are such partners that everything is just like, all right, you got it, okay, great. And then by the end of the day, you have not like hugged each other. So you kind of have to keep having that conversation, because then we were able to say, hey, that task, right, of actually, this was about cooking. I hate cooking. If I didn't have to feed myself, if there was a doggy like chew brand for human beings of kibble, I would probably be eating that. And so I was like, I could cook, but it's such an energy lift for me to like think of what to eat, figure it out, put it together. I just don't really want to do it. And he's like, I'm not great at it, but I don't mind it. So it's this thing where like, maybe I'm better at something, but my energy investment is really heavy. Are you okay doing that? Great. And then there was like the doctor's appointments. He's like, I hate calling a doctor. I know it takes 5 minutes, but for you, you don't mind. Great. So you kind of keep talking and you're like, ooh, this actually should be with me, because the way I feel about these things is heavy versus not.
Yeah, I love that advice. It is an ongoing conversation, y'all. It's definitely not one and
Yeah.
done. So for somebody who is so public facing, you've been a content creator, you've been out here on the internet streets for over a decade. You hid this whole ass pregnancy. Like literally, I remember hopping on my Instagram stories and you're in a freaking hospital bed. And next thing you know, the next frame is like, there's a whole ass baby. I'm like, how? Why? What? Tell us why. What was your your reasoning behind this?
It was actually the funnest thing I've ever done. I'm like, the next baby I would like to share early, but I was like, but it was so fun not to.
Giving Beyonce, like that's some celebrity shit.
Literally, it was really fun. So my thinking about it was, and I was very public that I had a miscarriage previously. And that's something that I knew I wanted to share because my platform is all about authenticity, which authenticity does not mean lack of privacy. You still have a complete right to privacy. But for me, it was having authentic conversations. So when I was talking about my miscarriage, it was because I thought, hey, like when I was looking for support on this really heavy topic, I couldn't find it. So while it might be hard for me to share, I'm going to tell you about it because that's what I needed. So that's kind of how I came to that decision. So when I was really open about that, lovingly, everyone gave me so much support, but there's also a lot of questions. People were like, but did you try this? Did you? And I'm like, I didn't ask you. And so I started to get a little bit of that. And, it happens with everything, unsolicited advice. And I thought, well, after loss, you're always going to have a little bit more anxiety. Well, a lot more anxiety in your following pregnancy. And I said, if anyone tells me the wrong thing, I'm going to spiral. If anyone asks me the wrong question, I'm going to spiral. So our plan was that after the anatomy scan, if you're a mom, that's kind of a breath of fresh air. Baby has all 10 toes, has everything developed as well as possible. We said after that anatomy scan, we will announce. And as we got closer to the anatomy scan, I said, but what if we didn't? So we both looked at each other and we were like, I think I still want to keep this to us because I don't want any advice. I don't want anyone as a first time mom to tell me anything. And we just kept it. And what's so fascinating is this is 2 lessons in there. One, I reposted a lot of content when I was too pregnant to like make new stuff. So people didn't even notice things were being reposted for months. And then the second is, like social media, you can make anything look like anything. I remember I had moved into a house and I have these videos of me from the back, like no one noticed anything. So 2-part there. But then when it came to actually announcing what we wanted was to really, and it's funny because my PR brain kicked in. I used to work in public relations and I said, if we just drop a picture of Athena and we're like, welcome to the world, Athena, a lot of people are going to be like, did I miss something? I think I missed an announcement, right? So they're going to be confused. They're going to start looking through my page. So I said, we're going to announce we're pregnant today. And tomorrow we'll post a picture of Athena. So we got all this love. It was like, oh my God, congrats. Can't wait for the baby. What are you due? 24 hours later, actually the baby's here, which was really, really fun. And I think it worked really well. So I think about that for launch moments. I'm like, you can't just launch your service. You have to teach it. Okay. So
She launched the human, y'all, into the internet stratosphere. I love it. Okay, so one of the things that I've noticed is now that you are a mom, you've been very public about your journey. So what made you want to kind of peel back the curtain on that?
I think I definitely, through keeping it to myself and getting to the finish line by myself, also to clarify, the baby picture was long after I had already given birth. So, like, I was feeling as good as I can be. Moms know that first week is how am I alive? But so for me, I thought the hard part is over. I thought, right? So I thought, but the hard part for me, where the part I was most anxious about, was over. And then I thought, okay, back to my mission, which is really like living out loud and wanting to share authentic human experiences is really what I circle my mission around. I want to tell people what's going on because, again, I always ask myself, the qualifier is, did I have anyone talk about this? And if not, I should be talking about this because no one else is. So does that mean it's taboo? Does that mean we're missing those stories? So the first thing I talked about, I remember, was breastfeeding. I went into having, and not to spend too much time on that, but I went into being a mom knowing I'll do whatever needs to happen. I don't really care. Like, fed is best. And I do truly believe that. But then I didn't realize how much of a mental toll choosing feeding, going through feeding, formula, the dishes, and everything has a big heaviness to it. And then I started talking about that. And then that first week postpartum, where literally you have this crazy hormone drop, I felt so mentally unwell. So, like, just wanted to share that with people is kind of where it came from. And yeah, was I getting some of the unsolicited advice? Sort of. I think I kind of made my community more aware that I don't want that. And I'm happy to respond when someone does and say, hey, I didn't need that. So I was getting some, but I was getting more community experiences. So for example, with breastfeeding, I had some people say, hey, I've been there. I've been exactly where you are. Not, hey, have you tried? It's like, I see you, I'm with you. And it gave me such a fulfilling sense of community that I wanted to continue just that energy in my page. And then the other thing I noticed was, again, my life is my child, especially in those first few months when I was on full maternity leave. So it was hard for me to make content about anything else. It was hard for anything else to feel authentic, right? Because I wasn't really doing anything. So I really started by what I call shit posting. So I, for my maternity leave, was like, I'm just going to post whatever the hell I want while I'm in this period of life, whatever comes up on my day. That actually gave me space to experiment. And I realized that I actually do like sharing the mom journey, not necessarily to like talk about everything that my kid does. And I think there's like dedicated accounts for that. And I'm so happy for them. But for me, I feel like the story of being a mom is so intertwined into the story of being an entrepreneur because it's teaching me about priorities. It's teaching me about boundaries, about balance, and about intentionality. So I really like talking about both of them, which is funny because, again, we started this podcast by me thinking, I don't want my mom to be being a mom to be my identity. And here we are. There's no way it's not a part of my own identity, or at least that's my story. So moving through that, yes, as a mom, people also want to know, oh, like, what did you buy for blah, 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 blah? Like, what was the product? And I was kind of sharing that on my stories, but I felt like that piece was not super authentic to me. I don't want to become your shopping mom account. I'm like, I just want to be your friendly neighborhood mom who owns a business. Like, that would be really fun for me. So I asked my community, how many of you are moms? And I asked it in a way where the survey said, I'm a mom. I'm not a mom, but I'm very interested in this. Oh, I literally do not care about this topic at all. And the majority of people were either mom or I'm still interested. I DM'd some of those people. I'm like, can you tell me more? I'm so fascinated by this. And they're like, I just like seeing successful moms. It's so interesting to me to see how you balance life. I'm like, oh, great. So then those topics now stay as content pillars for me. This idea of like self-discovery through being a mom and being an entrepreneur. And it's not everything, it's not something I talk about every day, but those topics and themes are there. And then I created, which maybe you've seen, a broadcast group, broadcast channel on Instagram. That is my mom products, random stuff that I'm thinking about that you should probably know. So I don't have to bombard my community or try to like change up. Here we go. Like, we're only talking about baby products, but I get those questions a lot. So I've made this very closed group of people where I just share everything that's happening. I allow them to ask me questions. And what that does is it builds a lot of engagement for the rest of the stuff that I have going on.
Ugh, that's so brilliant, y'all. I hope you're taking notes, okay? Because this is how you show up authentically as a creator without feeling like you're oversharing or like anything is off limits, which I think is a great segue into, I've noticed, and I've kind of taken the same approach as well, that you are not showing your daughter's full face on social media. What made you make that decision?
It was both just the creepiness of the internet today. I think we all, and it's funny because you in the finance space, I think I said this when I first was in your podcast. When I talked about my debt story, I got the most death threats I've ever gotten. And I was like, all I did was talk about debt. Like, are you guys okay? I have very thick skin, so I was okay with that. But I was like, if a video goes viral, I think I had the trauma. I was like, if a video goes viral and my daughter's face is there and one person says one tiny, so minorly negative thing about her, I'm going to delete my account. So I was like, let me not put myself in that space where I feel triggered by what someone says about my daughter. So, all that to say, also just AI and technology and how creepy things are getting, that actually makes me paranoid. Doesn't have to make everyone paranoid. And then also, I'm Latina. Like, my family's very spiritual in the Caribbean spirituality arts. And a lot of mal de ojo is a big thing we believe in, right? And I always think about the eyes being kind of like the soul to a person. And I was like, I don't want to show my daughter's like full frontal face. If it's her enjoying herself from the side, like, I don't think anyone thinks anything of that. But if she's like in your face staring at you laughing, even the best intentions, I do believe in all that woo woo, like someone's gonna send mal de ojo to your child. So that was the second big reason. Sometimes Justin and I are like, do we just post this photo? It's so freaking cute. Or like this video, she loves to dance to this song. And I was like, oh my God. Debí tirar más fotos, her favorite album. And I'm like, I wish I could just post this. She looks so cute and so happy. And then we're like, but that mal de ojo, man. Like, it'll get you.
It's so true. I think for me, it's kind of been like, I want to keep this for myself, where it's like when you're a public facing person and like so much of your life is just out there for consumption, I almost feel like this is mine. Like this is accessible to the privileged few. And also, like consent for me is a big thing, like our daughter cannot consent to having her image all over the internet. And once that shit's out there, it's out there. So there's a lot of reasons to think about it.
I do want to add, you may go into this, whenever we have a campaign that relies on her story. So obviously we'll never show her face. Brands know that, especially in an ad, because I'm like, I don't know where that's going. But, we recently did a campaign with a mom brand and we set aside money specifically for her. And we asked the brand for extra money specifically because she's included. So an extra fee, and we call it out. We're like, this fee includes the time for my child to be in this. And
I freaking love it. It's giving Blue Ivy feature on an album. Like, we are here for all this generational wealth. Okay, honey, here for it. All right, so let's talk about the business, right? Because there has to be changes made in order to make this sustainable when you're inserting the whole ass role of mother into the list of hierarchy on the hiring chart, right? So, what did that preparation look like for you before giving birth? And what has that support or the changes of the systems, processes, whatever you had to do, how's that evolved now that you're in the thick of it?
I'm so glad we're having this conversation now because I feel like there's before maternity leave, during the time right after, and then what the cause and effect of that is a year down the road. And before, so I knew I was giving birth somewhere around April, May is what I had. And 6 months ahead of that was my goal. And I did meet that timeline, was to have a maternity plan complete. One of the big reasons it was 6 months actually is because one of my very important team members was having a baby 3 months before me. So she was going to go on maternity leave, came back, and I was going on maternity leave. So I was like, I got to have this plan for everyone, right? And what I did is, as a business owner, I basically started to look at where I was spending time in the business. So I was doing very intentional journaling and logging. I would, for 2 weeks, just get work done and start dropping things in. I had literally a Word document of my different revenue streams, and then drop a task. I'd say, this thing, it's a routine. It's something that I'm always doing. Then I came back to the drawing board and I looked at, are these things even necessary for someone to take on? Because some of them weren't. Some of them could wait until I was done with maternity leave. And then who could I delegate this to if not? So with the delegation, that's why I was also doing it 6 months ahead. I actually started pretending like I was on maternity leave that long ahead. So around that 6 to 4 month out, I was pretending like I was maternity leave, meaning, hey team, you got to take it on your own, which was great for me to start having time to get my home ready and do the things I needed to do ahead of having a baby. Because also, if having a baby, it's like it happens right then and there. You have no time to go back to those tasks you were doing last week. Like, you better have wrapped up life at least a month before having a child. So that allowed me to almost practice and pretend, allows you to troubleshoot the things that maybe you missed, allows you to troubleshoot the things that maybe you don't know how to do well. Now, the other component to this, because that's very much like to-dos, like tasks and weekly tasks, I feel like they were well taken care of. But the other thing that needed to happen that I was also starting very long ahead was separating my brand from my business. Essentially, the people who were hiring me, I think for a long time, hired my business for me. I was the face of the business. So I had to start separating that. So that meant including other team members of mine who were running those revenue streams to be more face forward, to show up on our social channels and do a Q&A with them, to in our coaching programs, right? I have a group coaching program where I was the lead. Now my team leads it and I'm just kind of popping in and supporting. So all those things had to start shifting before I went on maternity leave so that when I was fully gone, people didn't feel like, oh, well, Lissette is gone. Why did I signed up because I wanted to be with Lissette. No, you signed up to influence and impact. And I'm part of the team, but my entire team is just as capable. So that I think worked really well for us. Now, during maternity leave, all my revenue streams, with the exception of me working with brands, because that's me personal making the content, and one-on-one coaching programs. Those are the two that I had to sort of put on pause a little bit. And I definitely did see a difference in revenue this year when those two were a little bit on pause in comparison, because those two were the thing that I literally can't not do. That then brought in the question mark when I got back. How do I make that one-on-one coaching is one of the most expensive ways to work with me. I can't just lose out on that if I'm sick. How do I make that more accessible to everyone in the team? Which is something we're working on now. Is it a tier system? Is it a system where you get limited access to me, but still access to the full team? So we're still toying around with now, post maternity leave, figuring out what are ways that I can even further take myself out of the business, which I think for me, as someone who is so tied to, I said my business was my first baby, it's hard to let go, not because you don't trust, but because you're so intertwined into everything that is your business. So 1 year later, I will say the effects, kind of 1 year later, but the effects of all of that, I have noticed that, yeah, there are going to be some people who will leave as clients because they feel like, well, I was promised X, and you weren't really promised X. You were promised an outcome, but you still tied the outcome to me or to a specific person. And they did leave, and that's okay. And now we're rebuilding, but we're rebuilding from that starting point is you're working with influence and impact. It's not you're working with a set, and now we're switching to influence. You know what I mean? So it's like starting point, everyone's starting from a fresh blank slate. But there was that learning curve where, and like I said, after I came back, people were like, no, everything feels different. I'm leaving. I'm like, great. So more space for new clients.
You got to filter out the people who are not here for you on that next level of your journey. And that's perfectly fine. That's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is that we can evolve, and so do our clients. All right. So take us behind the numbers, right? Because one of the things we have to plan for as entrepreneurs is how the hell are we going to pay for maternity leave in this ghetto ass country that does not have any kind of social support system for moms? We're super like have the baby pro birth, but God forbid you want some sort of assistance in that journey, in that transition.
I'm like, if I had free time, I'd just go lobby and protest for paid family leave all day. But definitely, I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you're in the right place because you need to build that almost maternity nest egg. And what I did is I've always had a 3 to 6 month emergency fund for the business. So this is not for our household expenses. So our business has 3 to 6 months of just like savings if anything happens. I will say that we had to dip into that because we got to a place where, again, if some of those services were on pause, and as we know, just in this space, especially creator space, things get paid like 2 months later. So yeah, so we kind of had to dip into that for a little bit. I'm really glad we had that. Now, for me and my salary, I'm an S Corp, so I didn't stop giving myself the salary, even though I wasn't fully working. The state of Colorado, where I live in, shout out to Colorado, has paid family leave. So both Justin and I were able to take 3 months of paid family leave, supplemental income, which definitely helped. And I think for us, government programs are never going to add up to the amount of wealth that you're building in other ways. So the money we were earning was for us, was for our household. Everything else that the business was making was reinvested into the business. So that extra paid family felt like our life is covered. Now let's make sure we are recovering the business. We do have a few forms of passive income. I know you're a huge fan of that. And those, I would say, supplemented a lot of the kind of day-to-day expenses of running a business. It's not one of our main revenue streams to have passive income. So that pays for our subscriptions, a few of our team members or contractors' salaries who are lower salaries. So that kind of got paid and covered for, which is really, really nice. But then again, I'm someone who is always focused on building and growing and launching something else and more, right? Building more for the business, while the team members are really driven by execution. So they're driven by, we got to make sure we keep our clients and we get things done, which is amazing. But while I'm not there, we're not necessarily growing. We're just steady. So the business was steady during those maternity leave months and the few months that followed after. I think then things started to kind of turn back around. But I'm really glad we had that paid family leave because I didn't have to think about if I couldn't take money out of the business that month because it was not doing so well, I didn't have to.
Yeah, that financial planning is so important. One of the things I wish I'd known about, which I found out about later, was buying supplemental disability insurance. Like as an entrepreneur, you can buy that. And it basically is like the short-term disability that you would get through a typical 9 to 5 job. But pregnancy is a pre-existing condition. So you must purchase it before you get pregnant. So
it is so crazy.
pre-existing condition, God forbid. But yeah, so that is an option. Obviously, as somebody who lives in Florida where there is no social support system whatsoever, and people are always shocked when I tell them like the max unemployment you can get is like $275 a week, y'all. That's the max. Okay. We're out here in these ghetto streets. So you are on your fucking own. For me, that definitely looked like very similar to what you talked about, saving up an emergency fund, really pouring into the evergreen passive income streams that did not require my physical labor. I'm curious what your passive income streams are.
So we have mini courses, and that's the thing. Because they're mini courses, you need more volume. So to make the significant income, we've got that. I do have platform monetization on a few of them. So I always say those bonuses and monetization from places like Instagram bonuses, Threads bonuses, now getting into YouTube monetization. Those are what I call bills money. So great, that's covered. And then anything else is really just when we are working with brands or with creators as their managers, not really passive income, but in a sense, if the managers are able to negotiate more for the same amount of work, we know we're covered better than we were before. So that's something that a lot of our managers are really making sure we were doing incentives and really making sure that they prioritize so that not so much passively, but more, I didn't have to do more work to be able to earn more if I'm negotiating really well.
Okay. And how did you decide the length of your maternity leave?
It's funny because I remember now, I used to call it faux maternity leave because it was like, I was gone. But if anyone had a question, feel free to ask me. So I decided on 2 months as the minimum. And then I had my like away message for 3 months, purely because I knew that was just what our society has done, capitalism. I don't know, if I feel like, and again, I can talk about this all day, the minimum should be at least 6 months, truthfully. So I think if I would go back, and I kind of was sort of doing this, I would make myself available at the 3-month mark, but I would not ramp up at the 3-month mark. I really would wait until at least 6 months. I think I ramped up a little too soon, where I did find myself in a little bit of I'm burning out because I'm a mom and I have to do all this work at the same time. So yeah, it was really just based on society's standards, but I think 6 months would have been better.
Now, as someone who is, you have to travel for work, like tell me about that first time when you had to leave your daughter. Like, what were the emotions? Have you wrestled with mom guilt? Like, take us down that road.
Oh my gosh, yes. I talked about this recently. So the first trip I ever went on, she was 4.5 months old. Yeah, about that age. I was invited to the White House. So I'm not going to say no. Okay. Yeah. And I was like, Athena, definitely before planning ahead, I was a little anxious, a little nervous, as we all are, because even though, again, I have a very, very active dad who probably knows way more than me about my daughter, but I still get anxious about the way things are done, right? And I remember saying, I took her this little jingle toy that's an owl. Athena, the goddess in Greek mythology, is represented by an owl. So I took that with me and I took all these pictures around the White House. And I'm like, Athena, I left you by yourself for the first time for the White House, I promise. So I don't have a lot of guilt about that. When I left her that morning, I remember she usually was asleep at the time I left. She woke up, opened her eyes. She was still sleeping in our room at the time. And she just smiled. She didn't even cry. She just opened her eyes and smiled and then went back to bed. And I was in tears because I was like, that was a sign. She said it's okay to leave. But previously, if I would have done that, I would have taken the opportunity to go stay there a little longer to network, go take some meetings, make some content. I went in and out. I got on the first morning flight. I got on the first next day morning flight after the commitment was done. So definitely a little bit of a different way of doing it. And I think also as a business owner, that was an invitation. That wasn't a paid partnership. So I had to pay for my own flight and be okay with, yeah, I'm paying like $500 to go spend 24 hours in this meeting that hopefully will yield more for my business. So the investment feels a little bit heavier. I've gone on a few trips since, and I think more and more, I actually started to shed the feeling of like missing my daughter. And that I talked about in December. I was like, obviously, when you leave, there's always this sense of, oh my God, I'm going to miss her. But then as soon as you get in the car, you're like, oh my God, this is so nice. I'm going to be able to sleep without having to wake up and no one needs me. This is crazy. So that feeling kind of turns on. And I posted about it. I was like, it does feel a little bit like people are going to shame me for this. But the reality is, I know someone out there is thinking this. The moment that car is driving off into the sunset, you're like, whoo. So yeah, that's kind of the feeling. And I think that what that reminded me of is that, yeah, I do have an identity outside of being a mother. And I don't necessarily think that I'm the person who my whole life and label is mom now, but my like day to day does consist of being a mom. So yeah, it takes up a lot of brain power, but I've brought Athena into my life more than I am changing my life around Athena. And when I go on these business trips now and have those days to myself, I'm still doing very short ones, right? The last one was 2 full days. So out one morning, out the next evening. And for me, it's like, oh, yeah, like this is where I thrive in these settings where I'm here, I'm networking, I'm connecting with my clients and really having those moments. It doesn't necessarily always have to be about my daughter. But if someone asks me for a picture of my daughter, I'm definitely going to open up the camera roll. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit of a fun balance.
Yeah, I think why we are okay with not embodying mother as the end all be all of our existence is because we've been allowed the privilege of like creating and carving out these identities before motherhood, right? When I think about just like my mom having her first child at like 20 something years old, there's no fucking way. There's no way. And I think that's why we see, especially in the older generation, like this existential crisis when your kid grows up and leaves the house. And it's like your entire being, your entire life has been dedicated to mothering. And you didn't necessarily have this space to carve out identity as business owner, content creator, mogul, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And so I think we're having this kind of reckoning that motherhood does not have to be this all consuming thing, that it can be just another hat that you wear, but that doesn't have to detract from all the other things that make you you.
I so agree with that. And it reminds me of something that I just remembered we said before deciding, air quotes, that we were going to have a baby. There were a lot of people who tell you, make sure you get everything out of your system, make sure you do all the things. And we looked at each other and we said, there's nothing we care to do that couldn't involve a child, that couldn't be made better by a child. And even as it relates to entrepreneurship, I get like, I'm getting even anxious saying, or kind of like teary eyed saying this out loud, is I feel like a better entrepreneur because I'm a mother and I want to succeed and do all these things better for my daughter. So in many ways, yeah, like what am I getting out of my system? I'm getting so much more out of being a mother right now. So
Yeah, it's the same way that people tell you, like, make sure you sleep when you're pregnant because you're not going to sleep again. Bitch, the worst sleep I ever fucking had was being pregnant, okay? I will take sleep deprived newborn sleep where I can sleep on my fucking stomach, the over third trimester sleep any day of the week. And I will fight anybody who has anything else to
I
say about it.
Agree. I'm like, I need to know what pillow you used if you're saying that, because I could not sleep for 3, maybe more months out of my life.
Facts. All right. So I'm curious, did becoming a parent change your business goals or the vision that you have for your business?
Yes. Without saying too much, I definitely, so I'll explain it like this. I thought I was going to be a lifelong career woman. So, whatever business it is today, I'm going to keep growing that forever and ever and scale it until who knows what. I feel like retiring early, right? I'm definitely I didn't see myself retiring at 60. I was like, if I keep doing this for a few more years, fire, like I can just retire. And now I'm actually way more interested in not working sooner than later. So whether that means a pathway to retiring earlier, or does that mean a sabbatical type of agreement where I'm able to leave and come back in, I'm very much more open now to not working, which is so wild because again, I built this business because I'm so passionate about it. It's not that I'm not passionate about it anymore. I'm passionate about the mission. I'm okay with passing the torch for someone to carry that mission forward. I'm okay for someone to continue carrying that mission that I've started somewhere else. I don't need to be the one carrying the torch. So that for me is definitely something different because I always saw myself as like this leader, and now I see myself as someone who is like a beginner. Like I started something for you. Carry on. So I don't know what the actual plan is truly. So as I'm saying this out loud, but it is going to be more about how do I get out of this, even if it's just for a short period of time, like I said, sabbatical, because it's not so much that I want to spend time with my child. That's the reason I don't want to work as much anymore. But through having a child, I have reminded myself of like living and existing. It sounds so basic, but I think as an entrepreneur, I love so much what I do that I've only, speaking about mom being an identity, my business has been my identity. And then I realized, like, what are my hobbies? I don't know. So it made me kind of reshift the way I look at life a little, where I'm like, I'd like to have some space to live life. And I also think if I have space to, air quotes, live life a little, I might even come back with a different entrepreneurship idea. The entrepreneurship idea I had now was a continuation, right? Turning that side hustle 9 to 5 into a business. What would it look like if I did something completely different? Like, what if I got into a hobby that is, I started watercoloring? I'm like, what if I wanted to go there? What if I wanted to then become a gallery curator because I love art so much? Like, who knows? I don't know. And I think giving myself space would be really valuable at this point in time in my life. Again, I love the business I've built, so I'm not ever wanting to just like walk away from it. But the question mark for me at this stage is, what does business look like literally without me? So, not without me as the brand, that's where we are getting to now. But what if I literally wasn't there and wasn't a necessary asset?
I love that. Okay, let's talk about support and community because we cannot do this alone. It takes a village to grow a business and to raise a child. What does your support system look like from a personal perspective and also from a business perspective?
I'll start with business. So I have now 3 full-time people who work with me. I say people, not employees, because they're still on their own hours. So full-time contractor hours, but they're still contractors. Don't come for me, IRS. That's really valuable for me because each of them leads different parts of my business. So I feel trusted, or I trust that the main revenue streams are being taken care of and that we should continue to make money if they should show up for their job, which they do. I have a few other contractors who support with just day-to-day execution in those different revenue streams, including an operations finance person. So all of that is kind of how I've structured the business. The other piece to note about business is I still hire contractors as needed for different tasks. So like I'm hiring an accountant in tax season. We're not DIYing anything anymore. So anytime we need that kind of extra help. So we live in Denver with no family here. We've built friendships, but not necessarily, I think, friendships who are relevant for the space and time that we are now. So, for example, a lot of really beautiful friendships that we formed before having a kid, they are still at that life stage where they want to be child free forever, which is amazing for them. They want to keep traveling. So I don't understand how we integrate in terms of support. It's more so come visit when you're in town, right? And then other mom friends who are going through the struggle at the same time, where again, really relatable and lovely to have community, but literal support every day, it's not there, or it's hard to be there. So, what we did is the first 3 months of me being postpartum, my mom flew in and she stayed with us and lived with us. If anyone has the opportunity, if you're listening to this deciding, should I move back near family? And that's like an option for you, do it. I would totally have rethought living where I am now if I knew what I know now. So, having my mom there was literally the best thing that ever happened. Obviously, she leaves. When she leaves, we actually started what I call the family tour. So everyone wants to meet Athena. So we are actually going out to different people that we needed to visit. We had some LA friends that wanted to meet her and it coincided with a wedding. Justin's from New York City himself. We went back to New York City so his side of the family could meet her. So we kind of had been rotating through traveling with Athena. When we go to these places, obviously people want to lend a hand. I'm still kind of working remote and people are like, I got it. Go take your meeting. I'll take care of her. And Justin's able to go do his own thing. So we have had that almost like a tease of a support. Then obviously, when we are here, we had been playing that almost like schedule roulette, like who has time now to take care of her. Then my family comes for the holidays for a month.
God, that gives me anxiety.
Yes, my therapist has had really great sessions. So all this like family rotation, we have officially completed the family tour, okay, as of Athena being born. We're like, oh, okay, well now we have to actually get help because also when your baby is at like what we call the potato phase, where they're not doing anything, they're just lying down staring at the ceiling, it's quite easy. Like newborn phase, I think is really easy personally. Then when they start crawling and they seek attention and you have to make them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, okay? Because she's eating solids now. Then this is the real game. Then it's really being a parent. And what we've decided on now, we have looked at a few options just in case anyone's interested in if you've never heard of these options. Obviously, there's daycare. We prefer to have our child at home. It's just something that's very important for me and how I feel most safe. Then there are things, obviously, we know you can get a nanny. Nannies, I actually feel like it obviously depends where you live. They're not as expensive as I thought. I don't know why I thought a full time nanny is like thousands upon thousands of dollars a month, but I think you can kind of customize it to what you need. So I didn't know that you could hire them part time. That's one avenue we are exploring, having someone come on our busiest work days, which would be Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. That's when I have my coaching calls and when Justin's like doing the most work. So we are hiring someone part time hourly on that sense. And in our area, $20 to $30 an hour is what they would charge, which is like adding an additional team member, right? It's obviously an investment, but as a business owner, this feels like a team member that will help me a lot, right? Then the other thing that we considered is a nanny share. And I didn't know this existed before I was a mom, but moms in your neighborhood are willing to kind of collaborate and pay the nanny together. So if it's $30 an hour, you're just paying $15 an hour because one week the baby is staying at your neighbor's, one week both of those babies are staying at your house. So you can kind of trade off on people's houses. So I thought that was very interesting. We said no to it because we actually need a Spanish speaking nanny. And for us, it's very, very important for Athena to speak Spanish. Everyone in our neighborhood in Colorado did not have a nanny that spoke Spanish, so we couldn't do it. But that's a really great option. And then finally, a little hack. So my mom to me is still the best possible help I can get because she's my mom. I trust her. I can also tell her, when I want things to be a certain way, lighter. And it's cheaper for us to fly her into Denver every 4 to 6 weeks than it is to send our baby to daycare.
Isn't that insane?
Crazy. Yeah. So I'm like, great. Like my mom can come every 4 to 6 weeks for maybe like 4 to 5 days. And we're going to call those our reset days where we as parents are going to get everything done that we couldn't do because if we couldn't do it with Athena, which isn't that much, you can still do the same. But sometimes we need deep work time and like to not be interrupted. We're going to do all of that. We're going to go on all of our solo date nights. We're going to get as much kind of out of that as possible. My mom also loves to like do our laundry, clean the house. Like that's just my Latina mom energy. I used to be like, clean the house before she comes. Now I'm like, don't clean. My mom is coming. So that is cheaper than us having to hire help because it's about $200 to $300. She's down to fly. Like, oh, I don't need to carry on. Like she's that kind of girl. So yeah, which is insane. So nanny share, we're thinking of having like a $1,500 budget. And I'm sharing all these numbers so people can understand like, your budgets. I literally thought it would cost me like $5K. So having a part-time nanny, maybe like a $1,500 budget a month, flying in my mom every 4 to 6 weeks, which is about an extra $300. And that's kind of our sphere of help that we're getting. A very unique combo, but it's going to work for us, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that the transparency, and just understand that you can customize your life to this situation. It doesn't have to be all cut and dry. And I think what you mentioned about the cost not being as much as you would think it is, that's why it's so important to just do this research, y'all, because you could be psyching yourself out of something and you don't even really know the numbers. This has been, I mean, we've had quite the conversation, Lisette. Like, you have dropped so much knowledge. I want to close this out with this question. What would you tell someone who is in that decision phase right now, where they are the entrepreneur, they're toying with the idea of motherhood, but they are just in this headspace where, like, I don't know if I can make this all work, Lisette? What's your best advice?
Two things that came to my mind. One, you will never be ready to have a baby. You're always just going to continue to move, as they say, the goalposts. You will be like, when I hit that next milestone, when I hit that next milestone, there will always be a milestone you can make up. So you will actually never be ready to have a baby. So one, I would drop almost like the list of things you think you want to do before having a baby, because you'll just keep adding to it. But two, I think the biggest question, and something we talked about here, is how do you think being a mom will make you better as a business owner? And if right now it gives you a lot of anxiety and you're like, I don't know, then maybe just wait a little. But if you're thinking and you're starting to find yourself visualizing, wow, building a business that my child will be proud of, or being an example for my child, or I'm going to get more creative, I'm going to have more work-life balance because I'm forced to. If those things start popping into your mind, you probably are ready to have a child. So it's more about, how can my life be better by building a family?
I love it. I know people are going to love this conversation, want to find out so much more about you. So tell us how folks can work with you, where we can find you and follow your motherhood and entrepreneurial journey.
Amazing. Lissette Calv, anywhere you can find me. I think my YouTube will probably have a lot more mom things as I'm building that out, but that's where I talk about the entrepreneur's journey, being a mother. Again, I have that broadcast channel. Influence with Impact is the name of my business. Everything that you need to know about building your business as a content creator, building your personal brand, and monetizing by working with brands. That's what Influence with Impact is all for. You can follow us on socials and see all the ways to work with us. We have ways to work with emerging creators to more experienced creators, just different services for different stages of your business. And feel free to reach out via DM if you want to talk more.
I love it. Thank you so much for being a living example that we can all look at, as you can definitely be a badass jefa and a badass mommy. Okay.
I totally believe it.